Okay, people. So I am pleased to be joined by, I mean, so many hats, right? Actor, director, producer, writer, sound engineer, like recording, yeah, music label founder, just so many. The great Gene Pope. Gene, thank you so much, man.
Kevin, it's a pleasure being here.
Oh man, you've got a new film dropping, Queen of Knives.
Indeed.
Queen of Knives, which is a sequel to your 2020 film, King of Knives, right?
Yep. And believe it or not, neither of them are slasher films.
I know. Like with the title, you think, oh, who's getting killed? Who's getting murked in this one? And it's like, there's no blood, there's no knives. What's happening? No one ran upstairs for no reason. What are we doing?
That's right. That's right. It's an allegory, you know.
Now, when you made King of Knives, was there always the expectation to do Queen?
Not necessarily. To be honest with you, when Lindsay and I were putting together the script and story for King of Knives, we basically believed in, well, one step at a time, right? And the end of King of Knives basically held out an idea that, oh, there could be more to this story moving forward, because it's kind of an inflection point that the first movie ends on. And so you go, okay, so now they've gotten to the first stoplight in their lives, and I wonder what's next. And so the more we talked about it, and then of course, literally, I came out of a test audience for King of Knives, and it was literally the day before they closed the city, New York City, so with COVID. And so the timing was disastrous that way, but it gave Lindsay and I plenty of time to think about, so let's do the next one while we're stuck in our homes, you know. And you know, it was a very tough time for everybody. I mean, she moved out of the city because, as she said, she was listening to nothing but sirens going off, you know, 24 hours a day. And so she moved up north to northern New York, and I'm in the burbs already, outside the city, so we just locked up here. And we, you know, as things started to stabilize, you know, ideas started to come out, and we started doing draft after draft. And so one of the things that we did was, what literally happened, the first thing that landed in my inbox, believe it or not, was the dinner scene. She wrote that first. And because that's the center of the story, you know, in the end, that's where everything is, all the secrets come out and everything is told and everything is decided. And then the point was to build out from there. So how do we get to that point? And then how do we get to the end? And that's what we worked on. And believe it or not, that dinner scene barely changed at all over the next year and a half of writing. It just basically just was perfect the way it popped out, you know? And then, but we kept working the beginning and working the ends and substituting scenes. And even in the final script, the original script was about 2 hours long. Right. And we ended up shrinking it for a number of reasons. One of which was it was too many days to shoot it. So the budget was about to explode. And we said, okay, we got to dial this back a little bit. But we also realized that getting to the point a little quicker was better to tell the story, basically, you know, without getting into too much background, as it were.
Yeah, no, I think because I hadn't seen King of Knives, but I thought that following Queen wasn't really an issue at all. You know, like you figure with things like this, then there might be some nuance that you can gauge from the first film and be like, oh, that's why that character is now this type of thing. But just as a vehicle on its own, I feel you can enjoy it. You know what I mean? You can follow it. There's no issue on that front at all.
We worked very, very hard to accomplish that in itself. Is that we had to make, that was one of my goals, was we had to make sure this stands on its own. And one of the reasons is that we were treating the storytelling a little differently in the second one than in the first one. And so what I didn't want people to do was to look at the first one and then make assumptions about the second one. So by watching the second one, the biggest comment that some people said to me was, you know, I don't quite understand for like a bunch of minutes there, like, who is Frank? What is Frank? And, you know, I don't understand. And the point is, no, you don't know who Frank is. It's telling a story. It's revealing the information of Frank as you go along. And then all of a sudden you learn fully what's going on and where Frank came from and what he's all about and what his family is all about. So I wanted so much to do a movie where, you know, you're putting together the pieces and there's some mystery in the story in the first, I don't know, 25%, something like that. And that's a good thing. We don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be a Marvel movie where, you know, it's like slam bang and it has to have a fast intro. And, you know, there's a new thing they're doing with trailers now where they put a mini trailer in the trailer, right? Where at the beginning of the trailer, they go, blah, 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 and it's like, then the trailer starts just to get your attention. And it's like, why do we need that? We don't need that. You know, Robert Altman, the director from years ago, was one of my favorites. And one of the things that he did was, one of the reasons I admired his films was that you cannot quite predict where his film was going. It was going, and you thought, oh yeah, this is a fun. There was a movie that he directed. This was quite a while ago, and it was called A Wedding. It's very difficult to find that movie nowadays, so it's not much of a spoiler I'm going to reveal here because I don't even think you can find it. But it was called A Wedding, and it was a star-studded movie, a comedy for sure. It seemed that way anyway. About an oh-so-rich wedding and all the funny rich people that were at this rich wedding. And then at a certain point in the movie, so you're expecting it to be a comedy for the whole film. And at a certain point, there was they had this Mercedes convertible, right? Little get-around car that was for the groom and bride to ride off into the sunset, right? And so what happened is some of the people come out and they go, hey, the car's gone. So it's like, I think it was the best man and somebody else, whatever, bridegroom, jumped in their own car and followed them to get them to come back because there was still more of the party, the ceremony to do. So you're going along with them in the car, and the next thing you realize is you're staring at this scene that I'll never forget, which was, here was the car, and it's stuck underneath an enormous tanker truck that had rolled over onto it, and the whole thing was on fire. And it was a convertible car, so it was like, you're looking at this, and I swear to God, in the theater, right, I could feel the heat from this catastrophe that was happening in front of me. And then, so you think that the bride and groom, that's it, they're dead, right? Well, turns out not so fast. There was two other people in the movie that you thought were the wise guys, and they decided to take the car for a ride because they liked the car, and they're the ones that unfortunately got killed. But the bride and groom were actually fine. But you see what I'm saying? In other words, you don't know exactly what's about to happen. And I think that, so for me, I wanted to do, and Lindsay as well, you know, we both decided, you know, we got to bring this back, this kind of genre back, because a lot of people remember those kinds of movies, and so you don't, you know, as long as the payoff is good, getting into it, you know, a little slower than what you might be used to, I think is viable, you know.
Well, I've always enjoyed those kind of slice of life films. You know, like this kind of reminded me of I want to say is being Jessica Stein. It's something Jessica Stein, or might be Kissing Jessica Stein. Can't quite remember. I know Jessica Stein is in the title, but it reminded me of that kind of thing. A kind of oh, what is man? Like I like these films. Like there's 13 conversations about one thing. you know, just that kind of film where you're following people's lives and you kind of take that deep dive into it, but it's like, it's not necessarily like the Hollywood lifestyle, which is just like, no one lives like that. This is ridiculous. Like, things don't happen like that. It's different, right? It feels a bit more realistic. And I think
Absolutely.
that's really enticing. I think people, you know, the Hollywood thing is fine, but when that's all that you're being given, people get tired of that. So it's nice to have this different kind of feel. You know what I mean? That
Well, that's
different
why we put this,
exploration.
if I may, that's why we put this in Brooklyn, was because it's like, okay, this is an urban movie and it's a Brooklyn urban movie. But, you know, Brooklyn is not Manhattan. It's not like skyscrapers and that. It's, you know, it's kind of like a suburb in the middle of a city environment. And so that complicates it a little bit, which is what we were intrigued with. And and at the same time, you've got all these different characters, and the language is loose, and it's New York. Hey, you know, it's like, you know, my pal friend at the bar, you know, Sal. It's like, hey, he's old world Italian from the Bronx. So it's like you have all these interesting personalities that are telling the story. So it offers like a window into something that's a little different. It's not as predictable. And that's why we wanted to do that.
Yeah, when you were kind of fleshing out the story from the dinner scene, how easy, like, I mean, I should say, what was the most difficult part of that process? What, like, was there a certain point, a certain character introduction or story thread that you're just like, ah, this isn't quite working? Like, how do we get from here to here?
We had there, if I showed you the script, you would see numerous pages that had the following lines on them: omitted, omitted, omitted. And those were all the scenes that went, nope, it's getting in the way of telling the story. It's too much of a side, you know, going down another side street that isn't necessary, and the audience is just going to start yawning, because it's like, you the tricky part to all this is to do everything I just described, plus the wild characters that we have, and then but maintain the pace of the story so that you want to see the next scene. You want, even if this, you know, because at a certain point the movie definitely starts to pick up all of a sudden. And you realize that it's like, oh, there's more going on here than I realize. But that's a good thing. And so that's what we were working on so intently, as I said, on, so how do we get here? And so we wanted to get there in an entertaining way, but at the same time, we didn't feel that we had to push it and have, you know, things blow up, or, you know, ultimatums of discussion. You know, the thing about Lindsay Joy as a writer, and the thing I've always admired about her, is her ability to write dialogue that doesn't sound like either West Coast, East Coast. It's just, it's dialogue, and it's sharp dialogue. It's not the same thing you hear every day in everyday conversation necessarily. It's actually, she's very good at getting into vocal tropes that are used, or, you know, currently. So she kind of puts a marker there. So this is the way people are speaking now. But that was the decision that we made to make it, to keep the interest, was to keep the dialogue hopping, keep the story moving. So of course, in the beginning, you see Frank, you see what's happened to him, and it's like, it doesn't matter. You think, oh my God, what happened to this guy? And then you eventually learn it, and then you realize he's, you know, has a certain career path that he did, and it goes, ah, yeah, I see now. Oh, okay. While he's in the middle of two other plot paths, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah. I mean, there is action in it. I mean, we do get a little Fast and Furious. Well, Bike and Furious, should we say?
Yes. And to answer the question before it's asked, yes, that was a stuntman who took the hit. As a matter of fact, there's a picture of us with our ponytails back to back next to each other, and you can't tell the difference. I promise you, you'll see that scene and you'll go, is that a stuntman or not? And it's like, you can't tell. It was a beautifully done piece. But no, because you saw it was like it's solid rock there. And so all we needed to do was for me to get a concussion in the middle of shooting the movie. That wouldn't exactly help everybody. Okay. So I acquiesced and I says, okay, I won't take the fall. But there were times when the camera's there and you can't see what's underneath me at that particular angle, and there's a blanket under me so that I'm not getting all scraped up or ruining my clothes, so this is the art of filmmaking, the little tiny secrets,
But it does look so seamless, right, that you would never know any of that.
Well, John Delgado he's such a great visual director, and he's been doing this for a long time, and so I was I was thrilled to have him on again as director, because it's you have all these shots. When we went into editing, we had so much footage, so many different angles to tell the story with. So we had an abundance of riches, literally, and so we were able to pick out whatever we wanted and experiment a lot too with the edit. The edit took a while. It took about 3 months to edit the film.
Right. Like, was this easier than the first film, King of Knives, or?
I would say that it was more challenging because we were following a predetermined arc, right? In other words, we already had a story. We had to justify following that story. So if somebody goes and says, I want to see the prequel, it has to make sense. You can't say, oh, wait a minute, I'm not buying that transition between the first movie and the second movie. So that was always on Lindsay's mind. It was always on my mind as I was reading the script. I take a script and I read it and I'm literally projecting it in my head, literally, just reading the words and just seeing, okay, so how does this play out? How does this play out? And then, rinse and repeat day after day after day. And it took almost, it was almost 2 years. We were rewriting the script up until about, I'd say, a week before we started shooting. Truly. Right. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yep. Like, what with that, right? What were you thinking wasn't quite working?
Okay, let's see. It is possible to. Some of this is instinct.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
I know that every great director I've ever met, and of course I was a director too in the past, and probably will be again if I don't want to do a role this size again, because I'm getting on there. And I think the next one I am going to direct again. And so you have to, when you're doing this, you're part of my previous experience is saying, okay, so how do we glue this together? How do we get the pieces together so that it makes sense and that it transitions the story to the next scene, so that you understand it, so that you're as an audience, you should be in a relaxed state, right? That's the goal, is you have somebody in a relaxed state, unless it's a slasher film, then it's like, ah! But in this case, it's like you want to be in a relaxed, happy state. And one of the things I did when we were doing test screenings, I sit in the back of the theater. I did this at King of Knives as well. And I watched to look at everybody's shoulder and their head. Of course, the worst thing, right, is if you see somebody doing this, then you know you got a problem. That's today's world. But anyway, but what I would look for is shoulders going down, slumping, somebody slumping. What it is they're not paying attention, they're starting to slump, and it's like, okay, when's the next scene? And so that's the same thing I do when I'm putting this script through my head, is I'm thinking to myself, am I stimulated by this scene? Am I being given new information that's vital to the story? Then I can then recall later on in the movie and go, oh, right, Robert Altman, just like that's how he did it. It was like, oh, that's what that meant. Aha. And so it's not like it's a murder mystery, but it's a way of telling a story so that you get the full experience of the entire plot. You come out of there and you go, okay, that was interestingly not obvious. So I like it,
Yeah. But it that kind of filmmaking, like, I like the cleverness of it because everything is essentially there, right? It's just a case of you paying attention. Now, sometimes you get people trying to do that kind of thing, but they're deliberately omitting stuff, which you just kind of feel, I feel you're kind of cheating because you didn't even show the thing. So how would anyone even assume that thing? Or you get that like dus machina bit at the end where suddenly something out of nowhere happens and you're just like, but there's just something about watching something and having all the pieces, but you not knowing what the puzzle actually looks like, right? That's always interesting for me.
It has to be a solvable puzzle.
Yes.
If it's too hard to solve, or it's obsequious, or it's you know, dense, for me, it's like, you can have movies like that. That's perfectly fine. There's lots of different kinds of movies you can have, as we all know. You look back in the history of film, there's so many different genres that you can successfully execute. But for Queen of Knives and for King of Knives, it had to do basically with you being really wrapped up in the interest of the characters. You know, who are these people? Oh, these people. And here's the kicker for you. The other thing I look for when I'm in the back seat of the theater is I'm looking to see when and how people laugh. And one of the things that I was thrilled about when I watched Queen of Knives in this test screenings was that instead of it being, there's a couple of places where the whole place would go up, okay?
Yeah.
And, you know, and especially the guys, and you know what line I'm talking about. But anyway, the whole place would go up, and guys will be guys. Anyway, what I saw was little pockets of giggling and laughter and guffaws. It's like, oh, which was exactly what I was hoping for. Why? Because that was telling me that we were hitting all the different experience points of what different people have experienced in their lives. And they're remembering it, and it's making them go, oh, I remember doing that. Oh my God, yes, I know what that's about. That's hysterical, you know? And that's what we wanted to do. It wasn't meant to be, that's why it's not a straight comedy per se. It has funny moments because it's about the comedy of human error, if you would, as opposed to just straight comedy.
Well, that's life, right? Because you know, you can know people in life who make you laugh, but they're not comedians, right? They could never be a stand-up, but they're funny in that group dynamic, right? Even times like something terrible could happen, but you can still laugh. I remember I was on a bus, and the front seat towards the back had this kind of like a barrier type of thing, and then there was nothing, and we got hit by a car on a side street, and this woman was sitting in one of the front seats, and she went underneath it. She went underneath.
You can't make this up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just on the floor. And it was fun. I laughed my head off, but I was still getting up to help the woman.
To help her.
But,
was she okay? Yeah.
Yeah, she was fine.
Good.
But it was funny. Like, it's funny. You there's certain things, well, to some people, right? But there's certain things that you can find funny, but there is the sadness involved, and there is the like, are they okay? You know what I mean? Like, life is complicated like that, so it's hard to categorize it sometimes. Like, is this a straight comedy? Is this a thriller? Is this a drama? What is it? So, you know, I enjoy the fact when you get a film like this, and there are those moments where you just be like, oh my God, oh fuck yeah, I've done that. Oh my God. Oh my God.
It's like a fuck me moment, right? It's like, oh yeah, okay. So all right, so I'll share a little secret with your audience. Okay, I don't hide it. I've been married 3 times, because people often ask me, so where did this story come from? I go, well, that could take a couple hours to explain, but the nut of it is I got married when I was 19, had 2 wonderful children. That blew up. I went into a full-blown midlife crisis. And that's where initially This is the King of Knives part.
Right, right.
And this is where the title comes from, is that sometimes when you're going through the middle part of your life, and let's say you're doing something like a big crisis like that, you tend to start to indulge in, shall we say, maybe not the safest things to do. It's as if you're playing with sharp objects a little too much, right? And the problem is, if you play with sharp objects for too long, you're going to cut yourself. All right, that's what's going to happen. And I was definitely going through that as I was trying to recover from this disaster of what had happened to me. And then I got married the second time, have a wonderful child. Actually, it's Roxy Pope in the movie. They're wonderful. We went to acting, 2-year acting conservatories at the same time. And that's why we can work together so easily, is that, you get it beaten into you that you do not care who that person is across from you. All you care about is what's their character? What are you reacting to? And that back and forth. And we did a couple of little short test films together, and we realized that we could work very easily on just about any topic whatsoever. And so we knew we could do this. This wasn't a matter of, oh, I'm going to get my kid in the movie. No, Roxy is extraordinarily talented. And especially if you look at King of Knives, they steal that movie. If I may say, and it's not me saying it. This is a lot of other people saying they stole the movie. And it's like, yeah, it was a lot of good dialogue for them. And so that's, and again, I went through a kind of a mini crisis, and now I've been married, 22 years now with a wonderful lady, who also went through some of this stuff, and it's happiness at last. And so I'm not quite as crazy as I was, but I sure have the memories. Woo! Woo! Talk about fallible. Oh my God. Some of the stories I could tell. And none of the stories in the film are exactly like what I went through, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. Lindsay came up with all kinds of comparable stories that we could tell our tale with step by step.
Well, I think, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Life, there's so many crazy things that can happen with life that you don't necessarily always have to do things verbatim, right? You can take the essence of and imbue that into something new. But I think it's interesting, right? Because what you just say, you married at 19, and then you've gone through these different evolutions, right? And how different would you say you are from that 19-year-old back then?
Well, let's see. I was ridiculously shy at that age. I mean, it's like, my upbringing was a little bit difficult in that, my mom really moved out of the house when I was about 2. So it was my dad, who was always busy, and, a part-time nanny, and that was the extent of it. So I really didn't have the influence of a mother. And I was an only child for quite a long time. So now I have, between Holly and I, we have 5 children. And it's like, here's an only child that now has 5 children. You see, this is rinse and repeat in my life. It's like, this is what it was like. It was so, but I was very, very shy. I went out for doing in high school. I was the guy, literally. And then years later, I seen it done twice in a movie, right? Where I want to talk to a girl on the phone, and I have, but I'm so scared of talking to a girl that I have to write down what I'm going to say on my hand before I call. That was me.
Oh my God.
I was such a tech nerd, and in reunion since then, girls from at a certain point, I went to public school in New York City, and then we moved to New Jersey, and I started going to a private school, which kind of saved my butt, because I got lost in the huge public school, 35 to a class. I was the one that sat in the back crying, I mean, literally, I needed a little more, just because of the background of my upbringing. I needed someone to handle me a little more. And that happened in that school. But it was a separate boys' school and a girls' school. We were next to each other, but they were separated.
Yes.
However, the theater departments had an agreement with each other that they could cast boys into the girls' school plays and vice versa. So a good friend of mine and I decided to try out for The Importance of Being Earnest.
Ah.
And my friend and I, and he was the opposite of me. He was a ladies' man, like at a very young age. He could charm a woman like that. Okay, you know, that kind. It's like, damn him, you know. But anyway, so I tried out, and they tried out for the part of Algernon, and who, as you know, is a you know, kind of a bon vivant, you know, woman's man, and completely not me writing on my hand. Okay, but I decided, all right, well, let me try it out, you know. And then my friend Jimmy tried out as well, and I said to myself, well, he's got the part because he is the part. He's that guy. And then the most astounding thing happened when they posted the notices on the wall for who got what. I got the part of Algernon. And I was like, what? Wait, what? Wait, Jimmy, you should have gotten this. What? So I went up to the teacher and the director, and I said, listen, this may sound like a weird question, but shouldn't you have cast Jimmy for Algernon? And she says, no, and here's why. You see how Jimmy is now and the way he is as the personality? That's how he's going to be when we open. You, however, are going to completely grow into that part. And I'm going to get you there. And she did. and that was the one time my father gave me a huge compliment as he came in the audience. And at the end of the play, I went out. I used to tell him, don't come to my plays. Just don't. Okay. Because he was too critical. But anyway, this one he came to, and I walked out, and there he was. And he's this huge smile on his face. And he's like, and I'm like, is that good? Or no? I don't know. So I came closer, and he goes, well, it doesn't get any better than that. And I went, wow. Well, I mean, my tongue hit the floor. You know, it was like I didn't know how to react. But that started the acting bug. And the difference, though, is that I didn't want to go out for acting in the beginning because I very much wanted to work and make money. And so that's why I went into recording engineering and on, and advertising and everything else that I did. But at a certain point in my life, somebody said to me at our local playhouse and said, Gene, why aren't you trying out for these plays? You were an actor. And I went, and then the kids were growing up at that point. So it was like, oh, okay. So I did. And then a good friend of my wife's, Joe Lisi, who's, has been around quite some time as a wonderful actor, character actor. And he said to me, Gene, if you want to really be an actor, you should go to Maggie Flanagan's in New York City. Okay. Take the whole 9 yards if you want to really, really do this. And that's what I did. And that's how I learned it, you know, and I was ready to learn it at a later point in life. And they just did a little video of me talking with the guy who runs the school now. And he was saying, it's like, you were definitely the oldest guy in class. And I says, oh yeah, but I learned a ton, you know, and I did. And so it's never too late, you know, it's in my book, it's never too late to try something different. It really isn't.
Well, no, but I think we've been programmed to think that, right? You always get that you can't teach an old dog new tricks phrase that people will roll out over time, which I kind of feel just gives people the excuse not to evolve, not to try things, not to grow, right? And as seen with just your life, you know what I mean? Like from 19 to now, we grow, we evolve, we change. You're very rarely the person you are when you leave school.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it makes sense for Frank to have that evolution, to change, to, you know, Kathy to change, like everyone to go through these, you know, growth periods, right? You know, that gestation and become new butterflies, as it were.
Oh, definitely. I make the perfect butterfly. I really do. I like all the color and the pomp and circumstance, you see.
I think it's the ponytail that really, you know.
Listen, I spent 10 months growing that sucker out. I'd never had a ponytail. I mean, look, we're talking about me going back into, I was in college in the early 70s. All right. So we're going back a long ways. And as soon as I got out of my father's control, I grew my hair down to my shoulders, like an old Neil Diamond album where his hair was down to here. And I tried to grow mutton chops, but I got severe acne. So I had to cut those off. but I looked like a completely different person. And it's like, and you remember back then it was like unisex and bell bottoms and more feminine looking clothing for men. The different textures of the fabric that were usually for women were being worn by men. And my father hated that stuff, but I embraced it. So for me, I totally understand what's going on now. We're going through another cycle of this. And so it's really not a surprise to me. I may disagree, but every time I see somebody that wants to do things differently, and I go, yeah, I remember that. I remember that urge very strongly. There's a certain age when it's like you want to break away. And I was also, when I was working, if I had any downfall, it was that I easily got bored. I would be at a company for 2 years, let's say, and then I'd go, I don't know. I know how to do this job now. Next. And I would turn around and do something else, and keep learning. So what it ended up doing, ironically, was that I worked at an ad agency. I mean, you think about an ad agency, recording engineer, that's all about music, having an ear for music. Then basically became a director, a bi-coastal commercial director, because I came from an ad agency. And so those are the easiest contacts. But you think about it, and everything I did, all those changes added up to me being able to say at a certain point, I'm ready to make a movie.
Yes.
And that is where, so that's why when you see if somebody asks me, so what's your real title in this movie? It's creator. It's something I created. And that employs a lot of other people to create it. Yeah.
No, I think sometimes like a label of a writer, director, actor, it doesn't really do justice to what that person is actually bringing, because it's more. Sometimes it's just that more. It's that vibe on the set, right? It's that mind in the room. It's just all of those different things that imbue like this whole thing that just lift it to that next level.
It's holistic. I'm convinced that most of the best directors out there had a lot of different passions in their life. A lot. The one thing that I don't claim to be able to do is I can't do what Bradley Cooper does, is direct and have the lead at the same time. Can't do it. I need my sleep at night. And the bottom line is, if you're a director or an actor, you're not getting much sleep on a shoot. And to double the equation to you're not getting any sleep, at my age, it's like, I can't do that. I just can't. I mean, I used to, in college, I used to stay up for 48 hours. Hey, no problem. And everybody else was like, why aren't you asleep? Because I'm working on this. I'm working on But at my age, it's like, I can't do that anymore. So I'm gonna have to, when I'm on set, it was one of the first things in Maggie Flanagan's that they taught me, is they said, as soon as I walked in there, Maggie said to me, Gene, you've been a director. That's a bad thing for you, because you have to shut off that part of your mind and stop directing yourself. You're not allowed to direct yourself, or else there'll be no life to what you're doing, because you're always going to you want to use your whole brain to become a character. And she was, of course, right. She always was. It was great advice.
How difficult is that for you?
Listen, here's what I did. So I took 2 years And I mean, this was like going back to college. It wasn't just the acting class itself. There was all the other things, accents, how to go into a casting room. You know, I'm simplifying this, but there must have been at least a dozen different side classes you would take. So that, you know, eventually I had to rent an apartment in the city because and just stay there during the week, because I had to basically was going to school all day long, all the different classes. But I learned so much.
I mean, so just as an aside, how did that conversation go down? You know, you're telling the wife, yo, I've got to get this apartment to be in the city. No, I'm going to school. Like, yeah, really, Gene? Is that what you're doing? No, I want to learn.
Now, you know, again, don't forget, you know, she and I have both been through our parts of our life, right? And we all know what we don't want. We knew when we met, what we didn't want to do and what we didn't want each other to do, or what not that we, and it wasn't even a matter of what we didn't want each other to do. It was obvious what we would not do to each other, right? We were not going to do some of the harebrained things that, you know, I'll take most of the responsibility there for that part of it. But, you know, I just, no, it's like, no, this is, I'll never see another woman like this ever, I don't think. And that's proven to be true. We just completely, you know, melded together. So, but getting back to the classes, then once I finished Maggie Flanagan's, then basically she offered a master class every year. I took 3 of those, and I was about to take the 4th one in 2020, believe it or not, between movies, just to sharpen up. And then COVID happened, and then she retired. So, but I feel honored to have had 3 master classes with her. For example, she would see me come in and she'd go, you know what, Gene, you know, you do devastation really well. You got to learn how to be happy, to play a happy part. Okay? You got to learn that. Devastation, I have no problem with how you do devastation. You can turn that on instantly. But you gotta be able to turn on the happiness too. And she was right. I mean, she would like pry you open like a can of beans. I mean, you know, it's like there was no hiding from Maggie. And the advanced classes were, oh my God. First of all, you had regular working actors coming in there, and some of them were, you know, quite up there on the IMDb chain, you know. And so you were seeing people who were very experienced also trying to polish up their work. And these were, you did in a particular advanced class, it would last, I think, 6 weeks. And you were doing scene after scene after scene after scene with different partners. And at that point, Maggie was relentless in terms of like, okay, you're not going to get a second chance on that set. So if you don't bring your best work to the set and your best spontaneity, okay, so you've done your homework, you've got your character, you understand the character to the nth degree, and then you come on, and here's the difference to prove my point between King of Knives and Queen of Knives. King of Knives, we had a week's rehearsal, right? That's golden. You have a rehearsal, you get to nail the characters. Queen of Knives, we couldn't afford it because the COVID protocols were taking a huge chunk of our budget away. And we had to shoot fewer days, and we could not afford a week of rehearsal. So everybody came to set with their character fully developed. And in the casting, of course, that's something that I'm always looking for, is people that were trained, that have some training, because they're the ones that come on set and they do their homework.
Yeah.
And so I'm just throwing an example out there. So let's say Alexandra Renzo as Autumn. The moment I had worked with her on another film and in a play years before, and I kept her in my head, and I said, someday we're going to have a character for her. And then it turned out to be Autumn. And she came on set, and bang, she was Autumn. And I just sat there, and I was like watching her start the scene in amazement, just because, I mean, I didn't have much time to do that, many brain cells to do that. It was kind of a side thought going, man, she's doing a great job. Now pay attention to her. Listen to her. Watch her. What is she saying to you? What is she doing to you? What is she intimating to you? Blah, 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 right? And the same thing was, let's say, well, I mean, because Mel Harris, you know, Mel Harris is Mel Harris. She you know, she comes on set. She's a pro from beginning to end, and she does her homework so well. There's no doubt about it. But let's take someone like Barbara Terrell. Everybody thinks that that's her real accent. Everybody says, "Oh, she's Russian or Eastern European, right?" And the answer is no, not at all. But what she did do is she came down to that same beach, and there's a lot of Eastern Europeans in that area. And she used to, and before she came to set, 2 weeks before, she said she spent days going down and just talking to these people to understand the accent. You see that? She did that on her own. There was no acting coach on the set. There was no, you know, accent coach on the set. She just brought it. And it was like, as soon as she opened her mouth, I was like, wow, that's impressive. And everybody did the same thing for every part. They came on loaded. Their gun was loaded and they were ready to play. And that's what we did. And because of that, there was quite a few moments where, you know, the script is always the God. You have to follow the script. Very important. But there are times when I made it that it was okay with the right people in the cast, that if you wanted to improv a little, let's say at the end of the scene, if there was some button that you wanted to throw in there, you know, so we get a straight take and now, okay, go ahead. See what happens. And there were numerous occasions on the shoot where the scene would end, and it was supposed to end with a simple muttering of a word or something like that. And instead it turned into this left turn. And it added so much, and we put most of those in the movie, cut it in there, because it made it that much more real. I can give you a specific example if you like. When we were outside the rave, and it was time to go, and Autumn says to Frank, "You want to, you want to go, you want to take a walk and carry some beers in a bag?" And the script was written such that there was just one word I said back to her. It was like, "Sure." But I was so amped up by all that chaos that happened out there. That was so much fun shooting that, by the way. Everybody was just improvising the hell out of that scene, and it was wonderful. They said their lines correctly, but the emotions were different in every take. And at the end of that scene, and so that happened, and I was so jacked up. And I went, "Hell yeah." And then she goes, "Oh, didn't know that about you, Frank." And then as he turned the corner, I said, "Well, you do now." And that's how it happens, you see. And there were several other places in the movie where the end button of the scene ended up being something that just happened. Just happened. A lot of fun.
Oh no, that sounds great. Like, with, you know, everyone really developing those characters, which you think, right, you would assume that's what everyone would do. You know, it's like going to an interview. You do your prep, right? You look into the company. You'd be like, okay, what do they do? Okay, what was their financial forecast last year? Like, what are they doing on social media? You look at all of these different things so you can answer those questions. What is the market like, right? What are the threats? What are the advantages? You look at all of those. You'd never think of going in not knowing anything, not looking at their website. Like, that would be insane,
right?
So you'd think people would just do that kind of thing across the board. Whatever they're doing, they would do that. But yeah, you don't always hear that, you know, people have done that with the acting. But what kind of information did you get, you know, writing the script and all of that, so you know what these characters are? Were there any reference points that you gave people? You know, were there visual cues?
Oh yes, there was. Oh well, yes. Well, yeah, but you see, that's the thing about acting is that the thing that we were taught, what's so important is that I'm vastly simplifying here. You're talking about trying to compress 2 years of intense work into 30 seconds, and it's not possible. But the two main elements are, what is your prep? to create the character. And so you're typing out a list of the characters. So who is Frank? What is Frank? What is Frank? What do you think Frank thinks of this, thinks of this, thinks of this? How do you think he reacts to this? How do you think his character is? Is he uptight? Is he, and on and on and on and on. Who is Frank? Mel's busy doing, who is Kathy? And everybody else did, who is their character? Then when you come on the set, it's as if you've just written a mini encyclopedia for yourself as to what your character is and isn't, right?
Yeah.
So how fearful is Frank? How tearful is Frank? Blah, blah, blah. So you create this real character, and that's part of the training. The second part, and perhaps the most important, is you come on set with your character. It's not necessarily you. I mean, I'm talking to you now, and I'm not talking like Frank. I'm talking like me, and it's different. You then go into moment-by-moment mode. Literally, moment to moment. You're watching the other person, and you're absorbing and reacting to every moment in your character.
Yes.
So I'm sitting on the stoop with Autumn, and that conversation we're having, we didn't know exactly where it was going to go. You can't have a predetermined thing. Otherwise, it's storytelling, and you can tell an actor is breaking that wall immediately if they start doing that. And it does happen. So it's not about what you instigate. It's what is felt and then sent back and interpreted by the other actor, moment to moment, moment to every moment. And that's the part that makes the magic. And so in casting, I wanted all the actors to be really good at that moment to moment stuff. And they are. They're really good because they're training and all their experience and everything like that. Bobby Costanzo, who played Sal in The Bar. He came in there, and he flew in from LA. And there's a funny story with that, if you don't mind, is that we were doing casting for that, and I wanted somebody that was old world Italian. Okay, my first in-laws, they grew up in the Bronx, right? So it's Bronx Italian, all right? It's like, hey, mozzarella, hey, there's a lot of that, all the lingo, and it's the way things are said, and it's Casanova, not Casanova. Well, so we did the casting, and one of the words in the script is Casanova, in English. And if you're Italian, it's more Casanova. So the previous generation of Italian actors who are authentically Italian basically started getting paid so much money for all the Italian-based TV shows and films being made. There's no way I could afford any of them. It was impossible. Absolutely out of the park. Might as well just give them all the money that we paid to make this film, and I still couldn't get them. So I knew that. So I decided to send me the next generation, right? What can I say? The test for me was, how are they going to say Casanova? And they were all talking to me in the casting or to the camera as I'm talking to you now, without an accent whatsoever, nothing authentic. And it was all Casanova, Casanova, Casanova. And I'm like, no. And then I said, isn't there somebody that remembers what it's like to be the old world Italian that we can get? And then they said, hey, how about, so Bobby sent his tryout tape. And the moment I saw it, I went, that's it. That Bobby, you're it, man. That's it. and literally when we met on set, so much fun working with him. Oh my God, what a doll. That guy just starts cracking jokes the moment he gets off the bus, as it were, where we stay between scenes. And he got off and he says, hey, I think I know your grandfather. And and I'm not going to tell his age, but he's a little older than I am, a bit, and I ain't exactly spring chicken. But he was even when he was talking to you, he was authentic. It's like, yes, here's an Italian guy that I believe is Italian, and it's not a caricature at all. the problem is if somebody tries to do an imitation, it looks like an imitation. But if it's in their blood, right? If it's in their brain, you can tell immediately, and you're not fooling the audience if it isn't. And so you have to get somebody who's authentic, and he is 100% authentic. And even with his age, he came, and it was 9 hours shooting that scene in the bar. 9 hours. It was, for all the camera positions and restarts, at 9 hours. It was grueling. But all shooting is grueling. There's no way out of it. And I was so thrilled working with him. It was like, he kept cracking me up, you know, but because he kept trying to cheer me up, and it's like, I'm not, you know, Frank's not buying it. Frank, yeah. Hey, have somebody. I just finished puking that all night. Why are you giving me this? No, my puke smelled like licorice last night. Stop. And you see, but he's just trying to be nice and be good. And then I won't give away, but you know the rest of the conversation in the bar and where it leads to. And it's hysterical at the last cut to Sal, where he goes, "Oh yeah, that's yeah." And he knows, and that's what makes it. But you see, so you have to cast with that in mind. That's the fun of this storytelling, of, you know, putting these pieces together and having a really good casting director, which we did, Liz Lewis and Rachel Reese. Oh my God, they got Mel in for the first movie. It's like that was a shock in itself. Is that, you know, the way I do casting is that I get there and I have the list for the day of how many people. I sit in the back of the room. I don't say anything. All I'm doing is watching the people come in. And this is the preliminary casting, not the callbacks, right? Where it's like there's just a few select. We're almost down to the decision. This is everybody piling in. And so I sit in the back, and what I do is I try to also ascertain what kind of a person is at the root of this actor. What kind of a person are they? You know, are they cheery? Are they mellow? Are they, you know, and does this work with the character and their general appearance and stuff like that? Anyway, so every morning I would look through and see if I knew anybody from my acting class, you know, in the list. And one day I opened up the list and I went, Mel Harris is coming in. My voice did go up. Mel Harris is coming in. And they go, yeah, she wants the job. Okay. So the hard part was not that. It was great. She did great. And there was down to 2 people, both famous actors. And so we had a callback. When we had callbacks, the 2 of them came in for that. And so at that point, just to show you how smart Mel is, because she's a very, very smart woman. You do not underestimate her, ever, at your peril. And she, so what happened was she came in the door, and then at that point I stood up and I said, "Hi, Mel, I'm Gene. I'm playing Frank," just to be polite and say, okay, because we were going to do the scene together, right? Yeah, how we worked off each other. And she just turned around and says, "Oh, I know all about you. I looked you up." She wouldn't have been in that room if she hadn't done her research, right? And so I was kind of like, okay, let's go. And obviously, you know, she got the part, and she was wonderful. She's a wonderful person, easy to get to know, and she's still got it all. She's still got all her talent and all her everything. She's just crackerjack. Always will be in my book.
Oh man, that's great. That's great. Like with all the characters, you know, there's distinctive like styles and stuff. Like, did you have any say in the costume choices, or when you were writing these people, did you go, okay, I feel they're going to be, you know, these colors for this person or anything?
No. Again, that's really going into it's going into the director's realm. And yes, I used to when I was directing, but you have to understand is that when I'm doing something like this with a lead role, I don't have time to think about that. I'm thinking about what is about to happen, the scene, Am I ready? Am I in my character? that's my clothing, right? My clothing is my character, and so everybody else is doing too. You know, before a scene would start, it was not unusual to see a few of us, like on the rave scene, in between cuts, a few of us we wouldn't be sitting there cutting up with each other. We would be thinking, okay, so let's see, how did that go? Do I, is that fitting? And then we'd start, and it's all chaos again, but it was controlled chaos. So, so the answer to that is that no, the wardrobe person we had was wonderful. The only time that I played with my wardrobe was in the introduction montage when I was in the bed.
Right. Yeah.
That was when I adjusted certain parts of my clothing, what was there, blah, blah, blah. Kept the socks on, because that was something I used to do all the time. It's like, why did you go to bed with your socks? I don't know. They were comfortable. They were warm. I don't know. That's what I did. And so I said, let's do that. And then what happened was, okay, so here, this is another one of these moments that happens, is that each one of the actors, you could always, on this set, you could say, hey, I got an idea. What if I do this? And then, of course, it can be yes or no. And then we go on, okay? So in this case, the makeup people had put the shmush on my face, right? We'll just leave it at that. You'll see it in the movie. And so that was applied, right? So the first thing that happened is that we started rehearsing that scene as I wake up, right? And I realized that all the shmush, at first it was on the cover, the blanket, right? And what happened? It all came off onto the blanket. So then I said, John, I got an idea. Let's reapply it. Do you think we can get away with moving this magazine into the shot, right? So then what I did was I went to sleep on the magazine, and then you see what happens when I trying to get up and I'm stuck to the magazine, right? That's how that happened. And then I just made up the passing out part, and then woke up with a start. And these were just moments. These are just moments you make up as an actor. It's in the character, and you do what you have to do. And John is the kind of director where he didn't insist on certain things happening. Like near the end of the movie, when we're in Frank's apartment again with his two kids, right? And they're doing something with his hair. We'll leave it at that. And at the end of that scene, you saw this kind of riot erupt amongst us. That just happened. It wasn't in the script. It just happened. But without that, you wouldn't have had that beautiful transition into the last scene.
Yeah.
And so this is how it happens.
Yeah.
I could go on forever with these stories. It's like, it's crazy. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, it's just always interesting. Like, you watch things and you wonder, like, what was that process like? You know, was anything improv? Like, how then, if you're improving scenes, how do you set that up? How do you, so when you get to, talk to the creatives behind it and hear firsthand, it's just like, oh boy, yeah, no, that's nice. Like, it's very
well, in this case, that's an interesting point, because in this case, being the lead character is an advantage. Being the creator and the lead character is an advantage, because I'm in a lot of the scenes, and so I kind of know how it's going. I can tell how it's going, and that doesn't. I don't think of that when the camera's rolling, but in between, I might turn to Caitlin and go, that was pretty good. That was funny. What you did, that was funny. And she'd go, yeah, keep changing. Yeah, it's fine, whatever. And then John would go, yeah, no problem. Next. And that's how we did it. And I think that's what gives it a lot of its spontaneity. It doesn't feel that it's by rote. It's not by rote. There's a lot of stuff going on with all the actors. And that was one of the things that I'm so pleased to see in the reviews, especially, is that people really, really love the cast. And I agree. They did an incredible job, incredible acting.
Yeah, no, I think it's all believable. Like you believe in these characters and what's happening. I think like because it is this kind of slice of life, right? Like we know these things happen. You know, on 444, Jay-Z's yeah, it was his last album. Like he talks about his mum, right?
Hmm.
How she then later in life realized who she was, right? So we know this happens, and it's fascinating seeing these things and told in a way that's not just sensationalized or, you know, it's just this natural flow. So I think that's a compelling part of the film, that we get to see these, you know, reflections of life, but told in a more realistic way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, listen, you know, I, hmm. See, you bring up an interesting point, and that's how, so how close to reality do you need to get when you're shooting a film? And that's an interesting question, because in some cases, under some circumstances, especially if it's based on somebody's life, let's say, or something like that, a living person, that's a biographic. You're trying to capture some of that, the reality of that person, because that's why the movie's being made, is that they're an interesting person. So you're
Yes.
you're going after a goal of imitating that person, not 100%, because it has to work. It can't look like a rag doll, you know, it has to be a human being. So like Oppenheimer, it's like, you know, I'm sure they had plenty of film to look at, see how he, you know, what his body mannerisms were, and, you know, and the lead actor was doing all that. But at the same time, you have the script, and the script is not necessarily word for word what he said or what have you. And in the case of what we're doing, it's all fiction. It's just fiction. So you really, back at the point of the script, you're really saying, okay, so this is generally what the character needs to accomplish in the story to be convincing about it, right? Then it's up to the individual actors to make that actually happen. But there is no hard and fast rule, other than, you know, where's the camera? What are you playing to? You know, are you cheating your head to one? You know what I'm saying? All those technical things on a film shoot. Other than those, what it really comes down to is, if you are really experiencing something with your acting partner, you really are feeling it, right? When Frank and Kathy have the big discussion in the kitchen later in the movie, that's her and I feeling to our bones some of the things that happened in our life. And therefore, as an audience, you will believe that. And then again, the part two of that is Lindsay's wonderful dialogue. The dialogue is so believable and so authentic, and yet different. You haven't heard it before quite that way, maybe. And that's a real trick to pull off. So, you know, so casting, script, so important. And, you know, really good cinematography, really good person finding the locations. I mean, there were some beautiful locations there in Brooklyn that were like, we sat there and went, oh my God, it's stunning here. Jeez, this is crazy. And then there were times when we had to work through some really tough parts of the shoot. And I'll give you a perfect example of that. I don't want to label the scene, but let's just say it's the later scene with Autumn and Frank, and they're looking out over the river. Okay. The last one of those. Okay. And then we'll leave it at that. This is just a technical thing. That was one of the most challenging scenes in the whole movie for me, because here's what was going on. We get on the location, and it turns out there's a highway right underneath us, and there are trucks doing their gears going, gah, 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 gah. And I'm going, oh dear God, we're going to have to voice over this whole scene. How are we going to match the emotion? How are we going to match the lips and doing replacement dialogue is for some people is very easy, I admit. For me, I find it a chore. Because maybe I'm a perfectionist. I don't know, but it's not my favorite thing, because I feel that you're no longer working with each other. You're working with making sure that your lips move at exactly the same pace. And so that doesn't necessarily, that to me could ruin the whole performance of that penultimate scene, right? It's so important. So what did I do, right? Because they taught us this in acting school. I took my disappointment that the sound might have to be all replaced, and that was embedded in some of my thinking through that scene, right? It's just a trick. So it's like I'm kind of bummed. You know, I have moments there, but I'm kind of bummed, and that's partially helped that. The miracle on 42nd Street was that when the software tools have become so good at cleaning up noise in a track nowadays, it's miraculous. And we had the person who did the mix, the audio guy, they are some of the best in the world. I worked with them in the first film, and as having been a recording engineer, believe me, I know a good engineer when I meet one. And they're incredible. They're incredible, their mixing ability. But more importantly, they would pick some of the finest people from the union who would go in there and denoise the tracks. And so we had this huge Excel sheet of almost every line in every scene in the movie, and every line that was problematic. And then they'd have a sample of which was before, and then a sample of after him crafting, trying to save it. We didn't have to overdub one line in that scene, not one. With trucks going by, the only sound that snuck through, but I said, that's fine, because it actually is at a perfect point in the scene, right? Was when you hear the motorcycle go by. You hear a motorcycle in the distance. It's subconscious, but it's affecting how you are listening to the lines. And so I said, no, that's okay. Leave the motorcycle in. It works with the scene. It's fine. It is the city, but all the truck noise, all the traffic, all the rumbling, enormous amount of rumbling. We were saying our lines like we could hardly hear. So that was an extraordinarily difficult scene to do because of those conditions under the shooting. Nobody's fault. It's just we got there at a certain time of day, and it was rush hour. So, but it got fixed.
Now, I think that's an interesting, like, taking the emotion and utilizing it for your character. Like, as an actor, you know, and the years you've been doing this, has that become an easier thing? Can you remember, like, hitting this kind of situation in the early days and how it affected you to what it is now?
The total answer is yes, because that's why you take master classes. The reason you do master classes, you take as many of them as you can. I strongly suggest like 2 or 3. Okay, if you could, like I said, I was getting ready to do a 4th, because each time you learn from other actors something they do, and Maggie would come out with some new thoughts that didn't come out in the regular class. That it's like, now that you're a grown-up actor, you should know this. One of the things she said that really struck me after one person's performance that was really good and compelling, and she said, sometimes just enough acting is enough. And I went, oh, you're right. Having gone through shooting some short films before we did the feature, the first feature was more difficult for me to stay focused because there's so much going on around. I mean, you're attempting to create a fantasy and a connection between 2 people, and there's a camera right there. There's lights right here. There's in Sal's scene in the bar. It's like that was all Klieg lights coming through those windows, and they were hot. And so you're trying to ignore all that. Let's say that doing the second movie, I was much more comfortable than the first movie. The first movie, there were times when I was like, I'm so nervous. It's like, oh my God. In the first movie, there's like 80 extras dancing around me. And I'm like, I don't like dancing, and I'm going to dance. I had to like learn how to dance again, you know, and be cool. And I'm like, all these people are watching me. I'm being honest. And it's like, yes, but you're drunk. So You're drunk. Just go with it, man. You know? And so there's no question. Look, it's been what, 11 years since I was at Maggie's, something maybe more. And yeah, it is more. It's 12 years. So have I learned more since then? Absolutely. Every project you do, you learn something. I mean, you need the experience to understand, to feel that, okay, well, I know what that is. Yeah, I see that camera, but I'm ignoring it. You know, I don't care if the light's in my face. I don't care. You don't care. You just care about one thing, and that's the person that's in front of you. Or if you're doing some kind of a monologue alone, you're thinking about what it is that you're doing the monologue about intensely. The more intensely, it's not overacting to be intense.
Mm.
It's overacting when you're going farther than what the words suggest. That's what overacting is. Because it becomes obvious. The audience can tell, and it's like if I'm sitting you here today and I'm going, hey, you know, it's like, it's really cool, you know, don't you think? It's like, I hate that, you know, it's overacting by a mile.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're being subtle and you're just, you know, we're talking like two friends, then it's, you know, hey, I'm reacting to you and your personality, and I can do that too. Or as a friend, like we've been friends for 10 years. It's like, Kevin, oh my God, you grew a beard, you know, et cetera, you know?
Yeah. Like, are there kind of tools that you use to keep sharp? Like, other than going to do...
You think I'm kidding? When I'm on a shoot, this is my diet, okay? If there's one thing I know for myself is I don't eat lunch. I can't eat lunch because it takes the blood away from your head. It goes into your stomach to digest the food. So I have literally an egg sandwich and coffee in the morning. And the rest of the day on the set, it's coffee and coffee and coffee. And then I have a light dinner and I go to bed. That's it. Run my lines for tomorrow, and that's it. And so everybody's different. Everybody's different, but you just have to know your body and know what its limitations are and what your brain does its best work on. And for me, it's caffeine. And no, I don't use any other recreational drugs. I really don't. I mean, yes, now that CBD is all over the place in stores, it's like, yeah, let's see if this will help me sleep. Whoa. Oh, honey, I love you. You know, you're so pretty. See what I mean? See, I'm turning red and I'm getting embarrassed now. So anyway. But letting that happen easily in your life, letting these things pop up easily. My father used to get upset with me because I was very emotional. I was very easily emotional. And after all these years, I realized, hey, Dad, maybe that's because you were a piece of stone and I'm not. I'm like my mother. My mother was an actress. So I think that's where I got it from. And I'm glad I got it from her. But there's no question, even to this day, you know, that what Maggie Flanagan unlocked was the ability to go and pull out the emotion that I already have inside of me. And you know, it's very easy for me to cry, always has been. My father hated it,
right.
But that's how I was built. And it doesn't mean I have to cry, but it means that I am definitely a very emotional person. The other thing I do is, I think it's because, again, of my father, that I have to work to be really angry. I know how to do it. I know what to think about and how to do it. And I can act mean. I can act angry, but it's not something that pleases me to do that, you know?
Yeah.
It's a little hard to describe. It's not something that I want to do. It's something that I need to do. And so I will do it and I'll create it. But I think every actor has their natural tendencies of what they can easily pull out and the ones that they have to do a little work on. But they do, because they're professionals, you know.
Now, when you're, you know, you're making something and you have to go through that scale of emotions, what is that impact like on you? You know what I mean? Like, is there something that you need to do to kind of cleanse yourself to make you feel okay? Okay, let me get back to my equilibrium after being like all that high or that low.
Well, I'll give you a specific example. I can't give away the one of the scenes in the first movie, but you reset before each take. You're reset. There is some resetting you have to do, because what happens at the end of the scene may not be how it starts emotionally, and so you just learn how to. In the first movie, when I'm being reminded of a terrible memory and I recoil, well, that was being shot all day long from all different angles, and I had to make myself cry, real tears. I mean, they came over with the sticks you can put under your eyes, and I just waved them off. And so in between takes, I was just involving myself with all kinds of dark thoughts that I didn't like as a child. And because I felt like it's a primal emotion to cry like Frank did in the first movie. And so these are primal feelings you're digging up, and you learn how to access them again. Sometimes there are things that you bury, and as an actor, you have to be willing to not bury them, bring them up, and work with them. It's not going to kill you. It won't kill you. They're just emotions. You know, humans, you know, we all have our emotions, and we spend a good part of our life trying to hide some of those emotions or push them down because they give us unpleasant thoughts. But I think as an actor, you need to be able to have all the keys of the piano there at your disposal, and don't be afraid of them. Just have them there. And so that's what happens when, you know, I remember Emily Bennett came up to me in one of the scenes where I won't describe in too much detail because it gives too much away. But basically, I had to go through a transition and be devastated by it over and over and over and over again. And she came up to me afterward and she says, I was watching you, and I would go inside and rest on the steps, but I wasn't seeing, I didn't talk to anybody at that point. You can't, you're in your own bubble. And so I was sitting on the steps, and she says, you know, I was watching you. It's like, that was amazing how you were, you would just reset yourself. And I went, yeah, that's what it's all about. It really is what it's all about. And I give kudos to Emily Bennett too, for between the first film and the second film, she just shot up to a level of acting that is just astonishing. She did such a good job on both films. But I mean, in the second film, everybody was going up to her and saying, Emily, the hell you been doing? You eating your Cheerios in the morning, or what the hell are you doing? It's like, it's awesome. It's absolutely amazing. And the scene in the kitchen in particular, where she talks to both me and to her mother. I think Mel and I at the end both kind of looked at each other and went, holy shit, she's kicking it. She is kicking it. I mean, it was literally, it was affecting us very deeply, what she was doing, but she was so prepared. She was so ready with her emotions. And you see the result. And that, you see, all these things we're talking about, it's like a jigsaw puzzle in a film. And the thing that's so frightening about making films is that it's like a jigsaw puzzle that you don't know the solution until you do it. Honestly, you don't know the solution until, like a jigsaw puzzle, you're editing the pieces together in the end. And only then do you know if you have something good or not. I mean, you look at how many films have we seen by some of the major studios, and they come out and they cost whatever, $50 million or more than that, you know? And then you look at it and you go, how did they make, these are the smartest people in the business. How did they make this? This makes no sense. And your answer is that it's blinking hard to make really good movies. It's such a complex process. There are so many steps where you can screw it up royally, starting with the script, starting with the dialogue, with the casting, who is directing it, who is the person searching for locations, what is the wardrobe like, makeup, you name it. How good is the editor? Maria Cataldo is my editor, has been my editor for years now, and she's absolutely amazing. It's as if she rewrites the book on the film. That's how good her work is. It's like she's taking the script and it's like, okay, now let's make this a film. and she, I'm telling you, she reordered scenes all over the place, but it was brilliant work. And so one of my sayings that I always used to say when I was a director, and I still say today, is that if you want to be a successful director, you want to surround yourself with people that know their job 10 times better than you do. And in the case of and that's what I looked for when we were assembling the team, from the producers to the directors, cinematography, all of it for these films. And that includes the editing. And that's where she just shines. It's as if it's a whole new film. It's a film that I look at and I go, oh. And that's the other part of it. Be open for change. Be open to another. Don't be stubborn. As a creator, don't be stubborn to your vision. Stick with the vision. But if somebody adds a little, if Maria adds an edit that suddenly adds something that's unexpected, just because it's unexpected doesn't mean it's not better than what you had before it. And so you have to be open to that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I found it in, just the stuff I do, right? In the day to day, I always tell the team, it's like, never be afraid to bring things up, right? Because just because I've set it out like this doesn't mean that's necessarily always the best way to do it. Or even like a wrong answer can lead you to a better solution. Right. So it's just that openness is so important when you're creating things. I definitely believe that.
Yeah. And everything counts, the music, the composer, the music that you license, although that's a bit of a problem nowadays. The prices have gone so high that it's absurd. I'll give you an example just for yucks. The song in the first movie, Time Has Come Today, is a great old song. And I believe at the time we licensed that for $2,500 and then it has steps, this time around, we couldn't afford anything. We're talking people wanting $100,000 for a song, $100,000 for a song. And I can see the consequence of that in so many movies. If you look at a lot of movies, you're not going to find much music that has come from, even you can go back all the way to early R&B, right? Whereas like in monaural, you're still going to pay through the neck for this music. This is the interesting thing about Instagram, though. If you look on Instagram and you look at my posts, I'm having a field day because they'll let you use 30 seconds of whatever song you want that they have rights to. And it's like, I wish I could have had this for the film. I can't afford it. And yet, how come I can pay nothing here? Well, it's because they're paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to the mega companies that own all of this music. They've scooped it all up. They own it. And, if you're going to buy, a famous rock and rollers music for $1 billion, well, guess you're going to have to charge more than $2,500 a pop to get your money back. So, but this is the reality today. So if I had any regrets, it's that there were so many other, I had created in the 2 years of COVID, I had created in Spotify, which I really love about Spotify, a list of songs that would fit the movie. And as I heard it, I would hear it while I'm on the elliptical in the gym, right? And I'd go, oh, put that in the list, put that in the list. So over 2 years, I accumulated these songs that you don't hear anymore, but they would have been perfect. Not one of them, not one could I afford, not one. So, and that's why you get a good music director and a music supervisor, and they will hunt for you. And we ended up getting like the music at the end of the film was actually it was an agent, it was a musician's agent approaching the music supervisor saying, how about this? I'll make you a deal on this piece. And the deal was good. And so that was how we got and it was an older song, but it was really well recorded, and it's very well, heartfelt. It makes a lot of sense. And so that's how we got it. But it was a struggle trying to get music. It really was.
And that is such an interesting thing that I don't think everyone understands or thinks about, right? Because you'd think, right, like, and I guess your advertising background,
yeah,
that when you have this stuff like songs that they're not, in the public zeitgeist anymore, people aren't listening to them, so putting something in a film sparks that interest. And so I was like, yo, what was that song in the credit? That's great. I'm gonna Shazam that. I'll find it on Apple, I'll find it on Spotify.
And then the credits,
list
all the music in the credits, it's all there. Yeah.
So it's just like, you'd think like people would be like, you know what, I'm gonna give them a good deal on this because it will help invigorate this song again. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that you'd think makes sense, but it's that harvest mentality at times where people think, I need to make all the money now, right? When you're just like, yo, but if you,
well, it's a bit of a monopoly, unfortunately, and it's a damn shame, because what it's doing is, I mean, let's put it this way, okay? I quoted you some quotes, right? Well, I can tell you that the composer, there was two composers in the movie. One was a good friend of my wife's who they went to. He was an exchange student at my wife's family. Augusto Lix is his name, and he lives in Brazil. And he helped to create a group that became like the Beatles of that country back in the day. So to say he's talented is an understatement. So the idea I had was, I said, okay, what if we had little guitar things, just solo guitar here and there as little hints and buttons that are kind of saying, well, that was a moment. Oh, that was another moment. And it's subconscious almost.
Yeah.
And so I called him up and I said, would you like to do this for me? Well, he went through the whole movie, and he went into a studio and he created by himself several hundred guitar licks.
Yo.
He took several scenes like the walk with Autumn and I through the leaves of the trees. That was solo guitar. Well, it was also composed with a mini orchestra by the composer. But it ended up that I took the guitar, put it there, took the composed piece, put it at the end, the last scene with Masha, and it worked perfectly. And so, you see what I'm saying? So there's still a lot of creative work that's going on, even at that moment, in terms of where to place these things and what works and what doesn't work. So he did an incredible job, just an incredible job, and it added so much to the movie. Now but here's the point I'm trying to make: between him and the music composer who did the broader music, a fraction of any of the numbers I was throwing at you, a fraction. And that's what I'm seeing in movies now, is they're saying, the hell with licensing from you at these prices. That's ridiculous. For a quarter of that money, I can have somebody compose really good music for the film. And I see more and more of that going on. There's more composed music now. So the composers are having a wonderful renaissance, and I'm very happy for them. And they're very talented. They're great people out there. They're not like, all like the big guys, like, they're doing wonderful creative work. So it's kind of a renaissance. So I'm glad to see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a nice thing, right? Because I think sometimes when you hear licensed music, it invokes your kind of footprints from that song, right? So instead of like what's coming from that scene you're kind of superimposing some of, you know, your past stuff onto it. So it's nice when you get that fresh sound because it doesn't come with those ghosts.
Yes. And the other reason is that, I mean, especially when we're marketing this now, as I said, I'm definitely using older music because there's a certain threshold in the audience, and it's pretty defined. It's a little diffuse because, you know, it depends where you are. If you're in a more urban environment, it's easier for a younger age to be attracted to this movie. If you're not in an urban environment, it's probably going to be older. But in either way, let's just say that it's generally like 35 plus gets the most out of the movie. Why? Because chances are by then, if something has, you know, the statistic, and this is not that great a statistic, I didn't know this. Somebody else told me this while we were doing an interview, and I didn't even know this, but of all the marriages in the United States, 50% end in divorce. 50%. Yeah. Ha! That's like, what? However, at the same time, I go, well, you know what? Those are exactly the people that can look at this movie and relate to, you know, and get a little humor out of it instead of all the tears that normally comes out of it, you know? But so you have to just run with these realities. But I'm glad to see that. I feel like we're a movie that's at the right place at the right time. I keep feeling that way. And I hope I'm right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you're soon to drop. You know what I mean? You'll be releasing soon. Like,
well, we're released now.
Oh, you are out.
Oh, yes. We're on all the services. I don't know when it's going overseas. That's the one thing I don't know.
Right. Okay.
In terms of the US, it's fully dropped on all the digital platforms, not like Netflix or the big master streamers, right? That comes later, according to the distributor. He says, first we go out on the video on demand, right? And or even AVOD channels, you know, advertising video on demand, and we'll work that market, and then I don't know, maybe sometime in the summer, we'll then, once it proves itself, then you go to the Hulus and Netflixes and all those and Paramount Plus or what have you, and see if they want to license it. And so that's how that process goes. So when you say it's released, it is strictly with like Amazon, iTunes, YouTube Films, Hoopla, Dish TV, all of those, and on and on and on. A huge list. It's on the website, which is, right, queenofknivesthefilm.com. You go there, you learn everything. I even remember that story I told you earlier on about some people not being sure that they had enough information about Frank, so that was disappointing them a little bit in the beginning of the second movie. Well, if you go to the website, that night when somebody told me this, I said, okay, on the second page of the website, the second tab, which says About, it has the little byline on the top, and then below that, it says what you need to know.
Yes, I thought that was a very nice addition.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I did that, was that if you want to know what Frank is without any spoilers, where he came from, it tells you right there in black and white.
Yeah, I did like that.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. There's, you know, as I said, you can watch the film without that.
True.
But it's you know, if you want that little bit of you know, backstory, that little bit of fleshing out, you've got it, you know. Yeah. So I think it's a good addition, you know. Okay. So like now it's dropped stateside. Like, have you had the reaction that you were hoping for? So you were in screenings, you saw people react on that front, but now it's out. Like, how has that been for you?
We're getting very nice reviews. I'm very pleased. The people that have seen it, who hadn't seen it before, are very happy. They love it. They can relate. Like I said, people that are in their, let's say, their first marriage, and everything is hunky-dory, especially with young children, because, you know, that's like a special responsibility. And I feel that that's, you know, that's not necessarily, this movie's not necessarily for people like that, because that's not what they're into at that time in their life. You've got young children. I wasn't, you know, when I had my 2 young children, it's like the last thing I wanted to see was a movie that had divorce in it. You know, why would I want to see that? Answer, none. I just want to, I'm taking care of my children. I'm trying to influence them and bring them up right. So why would I want to see a movie about dissolution of a family? But if once you've gone through it, then looking back on it and you kind of go, oh yeah, then it's funnier. And so that's part of what we have to work with is to see what the feedback is, work with that. And what I'm also doing though is I decided to, I hired another person who is basically putting together a tour. This is a new way of marketing films like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to some of the major urban areas, which means includes the suburbs around major cities in the United States. And we're going to have, in some places, it'll be single screenings. In some cases, it'll be a theater for a week, whatever. But in the first day, I'll be there. In some of them, like in LA, Mel will come with me, and we'll do a question and answer at the end of, but it'll be very carefully planned. And basically these will be people who are film buffs already. And they have a whole library of people that just love to go to the theater and love films. So there's no, it's a certainty. In other words, you can get 250 people in a theater, no problem. It's like no problem. And then these will be the people who will then go out and stimulate other people. You know, you got to light the fire. And so that's what I learned from the first movie, is that if you just sit there with it sitting on Amazon, nobody knows it's there.
I mean, too many things drop a day and a week. You know what I mean? So it's trying to find a gem, because, you know, you have that, you know, gems you might be missing, or you might like, sometimes the things they put in that, you're like, that's not a hidden gem. How are you calling, you know, Inception a hidden gem? Like, what's happening here? You know,
I couldn't agree more. It's like I see that on my phone, and it's like, no. I took the bait, and it's like, I don't know what they paid you so that you would say that, but this is your top 10. Forget about it. Forget about it. Forget about it. It's like, oh no. But you know, and a lot of these things, I swear to God to you, more and more of these things are being written by AI.
Oh, for sure.
Right? For sure. And you can tell, because the problem with AI, I just wrote a response to the New York Times, because they had an article about AI being used in business now. And they were talking about how a big department store, Macy's in the United States, was going to be using AI for their marketing. Okay, so I'm an ad man. And I'm going, what are you, out of your minds? And so anyway, so I wrote a letter to the Times, and I said, look, there's a difference between intelligence, which is AI, right? All right, so it's supposed to be, it acts intelligent. Okay, it has an intelligence. There's a difference between intelligence and creativity. Creativity, you have to have intelligence, but that's the creativity layer, is something that there's no way, if you take all the trailers, right, and you put it into an AI database, or all the movies, well, just to say the trailers, what's it going to come up with? Something that's derivative. It's not going to be different. It's not going to be new. The thing that humans will always be able to do that machines aren't quite there yet, and we'll see how they get there, is that is when you go off on a creative tangent and you create something new, and people go, oh, that's different. That's interesting. And I haven't seen that before, or I've seen that, but the way they did it, that was unique. You're not going to see that from AI. So it's like advertising from AI. First of all, I can tell now on my phone too many of the articles that Google pops up for me, right? Yeah. And you start to read them, and first of all, they're dumbed down because they're really short. It's like, really? All you did was repeat the same first paragraph 3 times. And then I looked at it some more, and I went, wait a minute, this looks like AI. Because when I was playing with AI, they started out interesting, and then they got dumber, in my opinion. Is they're getting dumber because they're trying to shrink the size of the data. But the problem is, it's like cutting out part of your brain. It's like you need a whole building filled with these things if you want something that's truly and has some intelligence to it. But anyway, that'll be something interesting. But that's the thing. I have no worries that AI is going to take over movie making. No effing way is that going to happen.
I mean, I feel that, yeah, you'll get AI films, right? But they will be those, like, kind of the equivalent of the film that went straight to video back in the day, or even lower than that, right? It will just be this churn of this, you know, I don't know, N level film, right? That you can clearly see, but it's just derivative. It's just like going through those motions.
Hallmark
It's
Channel.
painting by numbers.
The Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, but
if you want a formula that looks like AI, it's the Hallmark Channel.
Yep.
And the dialogue, it's like, oh my God. The poor actors that just have to memorize 100 pages of dialogue and just spit it out. And I don't care. Who's watching this drivel? I don't get it. Sorry, I'm probably insulting somebody and I apologize, but it's like, I mean, it's a far cry from Robert Altman. That's for damn sure.
Oh, I mean, and they know it. It's been the joke for years. They know it, right? They know what they're doing. It's like all the Christmas films that get churned out on Netflix and
and it's like,
and all of these
that's
things.
the same Christmas tree from the last movie. and it's like, Holly and I, my wife and I, we're constantly making fun of. We watch those once in a while for a laugh. And what happens is they have a tree in one room. First of all, they're in a house. The house is empty. And you look into another room and there's nothing there. Where they live in this big house and there's nothing in the house. There's like a little skinny tree. Why? Cheap. I mean, they are the cheapest movies you could possibly make. And you get to a certain point and you're just not going to get anything of any kind of quality. But that's not the point, is it? It's meant to, you know, there are people that it's like soap opera. You know, soap opera is all about pages and pages and reams of dialogue. End of story. Walk in the room, talk, leave the room. Get angry, slap them, leave the room. Are you looking for clever dialogue or, you know, pointy humor? Nah, no, not happening.
Not that. Never that.
What's that mean? I'm having a blast here. I don't know about you, but I'm
oh no, this is great, man.
This is the best interview ever. Now, why can't I get some people in the United States to do interviews like this, Kevin? What the hell's the problem here? There's a gap.
Unfortunately, you know what I mean? You just don't have an echo chamber over there, man.
Right? Oh dear. No, we won't get into that. Laugh about it, but you see, this is the whole point. Life happens, shit happens, and you still have to find time to laugh.
Yeah,
and just go, you know what? This is all fucking nuts. It's just crazy. And like I said earlier, I'm just going to say it again for everybody who's listening. Remember, cycles. It's not the end of the world. It's just another cycle. I'm old enough to have lived through 2 cycles now, and I'm just watching it. It's going to go through a cycle. And back then, we thought the world was going to frickin' end. Actually, we thought the world was going to freeze back then. That was what we thought back then. That was the theory. And everything. And, you know, there was too much debt. And so it all repeats. It all, you know, same orchestra. different music score, right?
Well, I mean, it really is, right? Because the PR people that were like telling us that smoking is good for you are now the ones that, and then they go on to sugar is good for you. And now they're on climate change. So it's just like, it is that same orchestra, just like, you know, a new backing singer. But it's just,
you know, the fact is, you know what is, some of the most intelligent scientists that I've listened to basically keep reminding us to say, look, we weren't dumber back then, but we had certain conclusions we made about different scientific issues. Okay. We don't have to go into the specific ones. It doesn't matter. And we absolutely were certain with certainty, beyond all reasonable doubt, what was about to happen. And then it didn't happen, or it didn't happen nearly as fast. And it didn't happen, you know? So it's like back then, remember the population bomb? Remember the population? And the population was going to go, whoa, we're going to have 10 trillion people on Earth by now. What happened? It went, and now it's dropping.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Unintended consequences of all the rest of the scientific. Humanity is such a complex thing. And I apologize, I don't mean to get into this kind of stuff, but you know what I'm saying. But it's this: if you understand the complexity of humanity and the Earth itself, and you don't take for granted that it's not like somebody said you're going to rule the Earth forever. It's like, nah, maybe not. You know, there's so many animals that are extinct. Meh, I don't know. Whatever it is, the important thing is enjoy it while you can.
That is the big one.
Help your children to enjoy it while they can. Don't go too dark, and find things that help you to cope with the things in life that, you know, hurt. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I'm at the age now where I have good friends that are passing away, and it's awful. But at the same time, I think back to all the life they had, and I go, that was a happy life. That was a full life they had. So, you know, I'm worrying about the wrong thing. I should worry about staying healthy myself and taking my vitamins and, you know, taking care of myself and worrying about me. And at the same time, remembering these people fondly and saying, you know, feeling in my heart, having them in my heart.
Yeah.
And that's something that AI can't do either. AI doesn't have a heart.
No, not yet. Anyway.
Not yet.
And when we say enjoy life, maybe don't go as hard as Sadie, right? Maybe don't go as hard as Sadie, especially, you know, at work, right? But everything else, yo.
There are some, I've met some Sadies. I have.
Oh, there's definitely Sadies out there.
Oh yeah. No, I don't recommend it, but you know, remember the sexual revolution? Hey, let's, you know, let's not forget. It's the same thing, just restirred, you know.
Yep. This has been so much fun, man. So much fun.
Thank you. I appreciate being on with you. You made my day. I'm so excited. This is, you know, it's not like, so how did you find the stuff about the film? Here it's like, we're having some fun here. It's like, you've got 2 minutes. So,
but, you know, I always just feel, right? Someone has spent so much time putting their film, their short, documentary, TV, whatever it is, spent so much time putting it together. You want to give them the opportunity to be able to just really talk about it, express those emotions, the process, everything that went into it, you know? And it's just like, the more you hear someone talk, the more you want to invest your time into what they're doing. You know, because you get the sense of who they are, what their vision is, how they tell a story. So I think it's great to have these type of conversations, you know, because it's just like, oh shit, I want to see that film. I want to see the next film. Yo, what's he doing? Like, what other things he working on? Let me go and look at that back catalog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you see, part of it is that one of the things that the audience can get from this too is that I'm not saying, oh, everybody's going to like this movie. I'd be you're stupid if you don't like this movie. No, you're allowed to have an opinion. I wasn't attempting to make something that everybody would like, you know, like Pretty Woman or something like that, right? That so many people would love. But I am trying to aim at a particular demographic that encompasses a lot of people. Even if they don't realize it, it encompasses a lot of people, and try to bring back this style of storytelling and filming, because for me, again, living long enough, you realize that everything goes in cycles, and that includes films. And so you know, for years now, it's this kind of film was like, I don't know if I want to. Now it's not around anymore, and everybody's chasing the next big thing. So for me, the goal was, well, I don't want to chase. I want to bring something back, because then you've got the stage to yourself in this environment. And that was my personal goal. That's the trick. Don't follow. Create new. Or even if it's old, but it's not there now, create it. Bring it to the fore, and people will respond and go, "Oh, I haven't seen that in a while. Cool." Right?
Definitely. Definitely, man. So I think the big question is, right? So firstly, where can people get the film? Let's recap that.
Well, let's see. Again, if they go to the website, we just put a page up there today, and it has wait a minute, hold on. I'm so sorry. Let me just get this up.
Oh, where to watch? Yeah,
where to watch. There you go. Yeah, if you go to where to watch, you got it. It's all over there. And the top ones actually click through right to the movie.
Yeah, Amazon, Apple TV Plus, Amazon, Hoopla, Fandango, Google Play, YouTube, AT&T, Uverse, Comcast, all your favorite VODs. You can get Queen of Knives, people. So all the links will be on the website. So click through and go check them out. How can people follow you?
If that's easy, on Facebook, it's Gene Pope. Imagine that. Let's see. It's on Instagram. I have to remember. I think it's at ampersand GP Pope, because my middle name is Paul. So I just want to double check. So silly, right? I'm sorry. Yes, it's GP.
Oh no.
I have all these names scattered all over the place. So it's at GPPOPE. And you'll see what we got, what we're doing. And there's also Queen of Knives, the film, is on Instagram as well, with some wonderful behind the scenes stuff. And the social media is very, very active. They're on Facebook, Queen of Knives, the film. And yeah, so there's plenty of stuff to look at and see, you know, what we're doing, where we're going to be, when we're going to be, and when this tour starts. You know, we'll be following that. I'm sure there's going to be little cameras, you know, now to have my little phone with me, you know, little bits of, you know, showing the audience. We're going to be asking the audience questions, what they like, what they don't like. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I want to push this. I don't want to push this artificially. I want to push it naturally, organically, as they say. You know? And this is the way to do it, is to get down to the people that I know want to come and see a movie like this, and then they can tell their friends and go, no, you should really, yeah, you'll like this.
Yeah, no, Kevin Smith has been doing it for years now with his films. You know, Matthew and Tori Butler Hart, they've got a film out called Dagger, and they did a similar thing, you know, and boom, every screening, people were flocking to it. They did Q&As. It was great. So yeah, no, this is a really good approach, and I'm sure people are going to love it. So yeah, people
makes me smile.
Yeah, go to the website, people. All the links will be there for the film, the socials, and yeah, go follow what Gene's doing, because yeah, you will. I'm sure after hearing him talk, you are fully invested now and want to get into the Pope game. So yeah, make sure you do that.
The guy's crazy. Let's see this movie anyway. He's a nut job.
But an enjoyable one, right?
Okay. That made my day. I'm going to go tell my wife now, you know that I'm an enjoyable nut job. You know that. She goes, well, I know about the nut job. Enjoyable? Well, we can talk about that. Right? Casanova.
Oh man, thank you so much for your time, Gene.
You're
I
very welcome.
really
Thanks for staying
appreciate
up
it.
late.
Hey, no worries at all, man. No worries at all.
My
All right, man.
pleasure.
When you've got another project, make sure you come by and we can have another conversation,
Oh,
man.
absolutely. Absolutely. I
Splendid.
know you now, and it's like, you know, we definitely talk to all the people we talk to for King of Knives and all that good stuff. So now we've got a parade, you know, which is great. Thank you so
Awesome.
much, Kevin. Appreciate
Hey,
it.
no worries, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye
Bye.
bye.